So, as one can see from that, it's basically, you can see, draw a line right across the top of the pole. The North American side is cooler than average, and the Eurasian side, including Scandinavia, is warmer than average. And when you look at the differences there, I mean, we're talking about 6-7 for the North American side, 6-7 degrees below average, and on the Eurasian side, 8, 7, 8, 9 degrees above average.
Yeah, that's really extreme.
It's and Alaska's and Yukon, well, Western Alaska, right over basically the peninsulas into the Bering, is really on the cold side. I mean, look at that. That's pretty dramatic.
And you've never seen anything like this?
Let's put it this way, we've never seen anything like this with such high positive values when we calculate the various indices. Nothing this strong. Or if it has been this strong, it's usually a hell of a lot colder.
Yeah, and it's winter, right? So this is abnormal, I mean, is a word, I guess.
It's anomalous, let's put it that way.
Okay.
It's anomalous. It's part of whatever natural cycles take place. That's why it's important, that climatologists tease out the natural signal from the anthropomorphic signals. And that's what a lot of the analyses do. So when scientists say, yeah, humans are doing it, well, they are accounting for the natural cycles.
So Europe and Russia is essentially having abnormally high temperatures, it seems, or
in some parts of Siberia, it looks like it's Siberia that's having much warmer than usual temperatures. Yes, yeah, that's now when you look at the Arctic dipole is something that's been recently identified. It's about 16 years ago was the paper that came out, the paper that identified it, and the dipole basically means you have a high and a low pressure system, and they kind of work off of each other. They may slide around a bit, but they work off of each other, and their positioning will actually control the movement of sea ice in the Arctic Ocean, whether the sea ice stays within the Arctic Ocean or if some of it gets pushed out through the Fram Strait. And usually these high and low pressure systems, they can weaken, but they move around a bit. Well, it looks like they moved around such that we have the system kind of centered over the Beaufort Sea, it looks like. And that's the Beaufort Sea over into the Chukchi, and that's really driving these strong positive flows. And the fact that it's just a very strong system. And that also then contains the polar vortex so that we get a tight zonal flow at very high latitudes. And then you just have the low system on the Eurasian side that's just is weakened, allowing probably some warmer air from temperate, subtemperate latitudes into the northern latitudes on the Eurasian side.
This is shocking again. I mean, this stuff keeps happening.
It is. It's. I mean, I looked at that figure there, and I said, "Oh, let's just draw a line right here."
I know.
I mean, it's just like it doesn't get more dramatic than that.
No, it doesn't. Like, it's almost just like, what is going on? I mean, could you argue that because it's so warm on the Russian side? You said the Eurasia side, right?
Eurasian side, because if you look at it, it goes right into Scandinavia, so it's including Northern Europe and, Eurasia. I'm just referring to the continent in general.
Okay. This is probably accelerating permafrost thaw.
Yes,
not melt.
That's a
thaw.
very good point. It will increase some rates of permafrost thawing. Yeah, absolutely. Which is probably part of the reason why they're finding those viruses that popped out of the permafrost recently.
Oh gosh, I know.
It's just like, oops. You know?
Oh my God, I know. And it's just like alarming. And then we got, I mean, I don't want to get caught up in the coronavirus thing right now, but that thing's starting to freak me out. And I don't know if it has any relation to like glaciers melting, but I know, the Arctic is holding
Well,
viruses. Go ahead.
as far as the corona goes, I think the latest I heard was that now it's pangolins that are the source.
What are pangolins?
They're very strange looking critter. They kind of look like um, scaly armadillos.
Oh, okay. Weird.
Uh, but
Very strange situation.
supposedly they're the source. But they have sequenced the genome of the virus, and anyone was saying, "Oh, this is a biological weapon," and all that's bullshit. It isn't. It is a natural occurring thing. So it's not
Okay.
something that got loose out of a lab. It's not some biological warfare. All these conspiracy paranoia stuff. Now put it aside. It's something that happened, and the fact that it's a group. Your common cold is a coronavirus. A lot of the
Mhm.
flu. So it's just a variant, particularly nasty one, but it's a variant.
Yeah, the images are all over the news now, and it's getting intense.
Well, let's put it this way. What does Trump do? He puts Pence in charge of this.
Yeah, I
Well,
heard that
that alone should scare the shit out of us
today.
because because Pence, when he was governor of Indiana, he let an HIV outbreak spread. He did nothing about it. He did nothing about contaminated drinking water. There's a town called Chicago, Indiana, I think it is. Did nothing about that. So we're going to put this guy in charge of it, and not to mention that Trump took money from the CDC to fund this stupid wall.
It's just like what can go wrong will go wrong kind of situation.
Oh yeah,
You
oh
know, it's
yeah.
like
And the CDC is not ready for that. And by the way, think about this. Okay, you don't have Medicare for all. You you have what you say. Well, do I have the cold or do I have this Corona thing? Oh, geez, I go to the doctor. I'm going to have to be on the hook for $3,000 to get this tested.
mhm.
A lot of people aren't going to do it. A
It's
lot of people are not going to do it. This is not having Medicare for all is going to contribute to this spreading, and it'll probably spread faster through the U.S. because of this.
it's
This is the what hap- This is what's collapse in society looks like.
it's
Crumble,
amazing.
crumbling infrastructure to go along with it. Yeah, this is what happened. All the money going to the top. Yeah,
Mhm.
it,
Yeah, we
this
can
is
build
exact.
luxury apartments, and then you have homeless people camping
Hmm.
outside. And then no
Yeah,
one's living in the new luxury apartments because it's like $3,000 to live there a month. Like, who
yeah.
in their right mind, like, what average person is going to be able to afford that?
No one.
Anyways, that's Los Angeles, but the weather's
Well,
nice. 85 in February.
it won't be in July.
I know. And then we got the Santa Ana winds in fall, which contribute to the wildfires. So this is
uh,
all kind of new stuff. I've been only down here for like 2 years, so. But go ahead.
it's basically all. What's the saying? Chickens coming home to roost.
Mm-hmm.
This is it. I mean, and I'm not being an alarmist. I'm just basically saying this is what's happening. Just look around. This is what the data is telling us. And now, just look at what's going on. Exponential increase in ice melting and temperature increases, permafrost thawing, et cetera, et cetera. And the ice melts and sea levels go up. And also, the other thing is with increased temperatures leads to better conditions to better spread any pathogens.
Yes. And that's alarming
And
because
that's
of
extremely alarming.
what's even in the Arctic region right here. You can see it.
Yeah. And I mean, I did a segment a little while ago where I talked about how warming will, encourage diseases that mosquitoes spread.
Yeah. And they're nasty. They are notorious for starting a lot
Yeah.
of.
So just think about that and some of the stuff that they spread. The vectors. They're the vectors for a bunch of diseases and conditions.
So as we
That's
continue to go into a warming period, I
as
mean,
we
we
go
can
into.
expect more insects to keep thriving and creating even more pathogen problems for us. And,
Yeah.
it's
Remember I
good to
said we
hear
live in
that.
the age of insects.
Yeah. I was trying to incorporate that back into the conversation. But they're gonna could you argue that they're gonna keep, like, they're gonna explode even further in, like, their populations?
The thing that will stop insects from spreading, things called oceans.
Okay. The sea
It's really
level rise.
interesting. You go out over oceans, you don't see any insects. It's the
No.
one major biome they have not adapted to. Fresh water, sure. Running water, sure. Still water, sure. Swamps, forests, whatever. Grasslands, yeah. Oceans, no. So that's kind of interesting.
It is. So going back to the graph with the numbers to break it down on the right, is that Celsius or is that Fahrenheit?
Let
Or what
me
are okay.
temperature, yep, in degrees Celsius. So keep in mind that a change of 1 degree Celsius is 1.8 in Fahrenheit.
That's a big deal.
That's a big deal. So when they're talking, for example, 7 or 8 degrees Celsius, well, take 8. 8 times 1.8 is going to be what? 12.4. 12.4 degrees Fahrenheit warmer.
In the Arctic, which is not good.
No.
Considering if we get to it with our time and stuff, and we might, but like you might as well just hit it right now. There's polar bears. I read an article. Polar bears are starting to eat each other more. At least it's being recorded more because they're suffering from lack of food choices, and they're practicing cannibalism. It's an article from The Guardian, and because of sea ice melt, they're having trouble surviving, so they're killing their own, I guess, right? Like they'll eat the pups or they'll eat the cubs of the other polar bears.
The thing is also with the loss of the ice, they can't hunt seals. So some of them are getting so desperate as to actually dive into walrus colonies and trying to get to the walrus calves. Well, good luck when you've got mom there, who's walrus moms are bigger than polar bears.
They're so big. It's funny though.
I mean, that's how desperate they are. They're desperate.
And their environment is rapidly changing.
Oh, yeah.
It's alarming because essentially we know maybe within our life, could you argue within your lifetime too, like the polar bears in the Arctic and the Antarctica ecosystems could, what's the right word? Could be almost extinct, really.
They could go extinct.
Yeah, by 50, maybe less than that,
Yeah.
Based on you could argue this graph is, that's not good for permafrost, sea ice melt.
No.
The Arctic ecosystems, the animals. So.
No, it isn't. The thing is, with all these rapid changes, organisms are not given enough time to adapt. It's just happening too fast for them to adapt, which is another problem. But I saw that graph, and on the basis and you notice that's a little different than a previous graph that just showed, isolated over Alaska and the Yukon. This is now spread throughout at least on the American side of the circumpolar North American side. So, systems changing.
It's changing too fast for a lot of things to adapt.
Yeah.
And whales probably are getting disrupted. Everything.
I just read an article, and I've been saying this for some time because I know of the research being done, but it's now out there in the, I guess you could say, the non-scientifically published world, that the ecosystem in the Bering and Chukchi, especially the Bering, is changing. Now, I've known for quite some time that there's been a documented change in the phytoplankton community of the Bering Sea. You used to had diatoms. Diatoms are cold water phytos. Well, they're being replaced by coccolithophorids. We just call them coccoliths for short because it's just a mouthful to say coccolithophorids all the time.
Coccolithophorids, I can't even say.
Yeah, coccolithophorids, yeah, I know. But they're being replaced by coccoliths, which are phyto species that prefer warmer waters. Now, keep in mind also that the Bering Shelf is shallow. It's only at, on average about 50 meters deep, so it's not very deep. But still, you've heated up the water column through and through to the point that you're actually replacing the primary producer, and that will in turn affect the zooplankton, the fish communities, this all the way up to the seals.
Which in turn affects human economy and humanity's food security.
It's one of the big things they're looking at is the Dungeness crab industry, how they're being affected by this change in the phytoplankton community. The other thing also is that in the past, when you've had the Arctic ice retreat, as get into March, April, May, June, all that kind of stuff, you get what's called ice shelf productivity effects, because where the sea ice melts, you get a little lesser dense water on the surface. You get a little mini stratification. Phytoplankton are there, bang, they just jump right into productivity.
Mm-hmm.
And that actually helps drive communities. Well, you take the ice edge effect and just expand that across the entire Arctic basin. That's a significant amount of productivity. Reduce sea ice reduces the springtime Arctic ice shelf productivity, because there's less ice to melt later on. That means it's going to be less stratification.
And this is really sad, and because I've seen a lot of David Attenborough Planet series, and I've seen the Arctic, his series, and it's really cool, like all the little like creatures and the crabs, and like they're so funky looking, but they're so like unique and majestic, really, like the starfish up there. And it's just like, these guys are just getting decimated, it seems like. And these temperatures in winter aren't helping, I'm guessing, so.
The other thing is that, take for example, your baleen whales. Where are they found for most of the year? They're found in high latitudes.
Mm-hmm.
Because high latitudes, because you have all the different salinities leading to different stratifications, and which means different productivity regimes, tend to be more productive than lower latitude oceans. In fact, aside from right at coral reefs, you don't have a whole lot of productivity in low latitude oceanic regions. So you get the humpback whales and the gray whales, whatever, they go up into the Gulf of Alaska, for example, to feed.
Mm-hmm.
And then what do? They then migrate back to Hawaii to have their young, to reproduce and have their young. That's the migration. I mean, look at the gray whales going up and down the West Coast. They migrate to southern waters because it's warmer for the youngsters who haven't developed their blubber layers yet. So they go down to the warmer waters to have their young, but then they migrate back up north to feed, because that's where the productivities are. Well, this is going to start affecting the productivities up north.
Yeah.
That's gonna have some serious consequences.
It's like we know what's going to happen, and it's really sad. I mean, I'm expecting extinction for a lot of these animals.
We're in the middle of sixth or seventh extinction, depending on this newest possible mass extinction event that's been apparently identified. Still in a peer review process, but yeah, it's just unbelievable.